Hello, this is Phil Tomzak, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the May 15th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And let's start with front page news from the GTA. The headline is These Toronto councillors want the province's Billy Bishop Airport plan added to the October ballot, if the province will let them. And this comes from Madis Habibinia, City Hall Bureau for the Star. A question asking Toronto voters how they feel about the province's move to bring jets to Billy Bishop Airport may be on the ballot on October 26th, if the province itself agrees. A motion at last week's council meeting by Councillor Diane Sachs, seconded by Councillor Josh Matlow, asked Council to request the province add a formal referendum on the island airport expansion to the fall's municipal election, a move that's unlikely to succeed, but one that may send a message, according to experts. It's the latest long-shot attempt by some of Toronto's elected officials to change the course of a provincial move the city has little control over. I think it's basically calling the province's bluff, that if a government that presents itself as populist and therefore kind of radically democratic refuses to allow the people to speak on an issue, they're calling the bluff, said Zach Taylor, a Western University political scientist. Sachs said Torontonians haven't been given any opportunity to have their say. The Doug Ford government didn't announce its plans during the last election, so they didn't get a public mandate for it. There's also been no public debate, and the province didn't announce it early enough for the city to have the right to put the question on the fall ballot, she added. I don't think there's any other way to allow a public a say, Sachs said. The airport expansion isn't a small change. An April poll by Liaison Strategies found Torontonians' opinions on jets at the island airport are fairly evenly split, but a strong majority think residents should still get a say on what happens. What the law says about a referendum. The Municipal Elections Act requires the city to pass a bylaw to submit a question to the voters on or before March 1st of an election year. Ford announced his plan for Billy Bishop in April. The Municipal Elections Act also places limitations on the type of questions cities can put on the ballot. For example, it says the questions must be about a matter within the jurisdiction of the municipality, and it cannot be about a matter which has been prescribed as a matter of provincial interest. Sachs's motion asked the Ford government to amend the legislation to allow the city to ask Torontonians, do you want the City of Toronto to support and cooperate in Premier Ford's plan to turn Billy Bishop Airport into a jet airport? The province did not answer the Star's question about whether it would amend the legislation to allow the referendum. The reality is Pearson is at capacity, and we need to ensure we have options for the growing population, said Dakota Brazier, spokesperson for the transportation minister. The economic benefit to Toronto in expanding Billy Bishop Airport is too important to not move forward. Let's move on to more front page news in the world of business. And there's a headline, Toronto gas prices are projected to hit $2 a liter, disrupt summer travel amid global fuel shortages. And this comes from May Warren, housing reporter for The Star. With the long weekend about to begin and the unofficial start to summer approaching, many Torontonians may be gassing up their cars and heading to the cottage. But the price at the pumps will make it more expensive this year, with the U.S. and Israel's ongoing war with Iran continuing to impact global fuel supplies and travel plans. Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, said Toronto area gas prices are heading towards $2 a liter and will at some point break the record set in June 2022. Those who've been in this business for a very long time are extremely nervous about the prospect that things could get a lot worse before we get back to some semblance of what was once considered normal, he said. We're talking a significant and lengthy period of high prices. The 2022 record was in the aftermath of the Russian oil being sanctioned, McTeague added, which was about 3% of global supply. We're talking about 20% here. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway for the passage of oil, has been largely closed since February. Even if it was fully open tomorrow, McTeague said, things would not snap back. There's also been damage to refineries across the Middle East, he added. There's a serious problem that won't be resolved in the next couple of weeks, said McTeague. All of 2026 is a wash. It's going to take a long time to fix the shortage that we've seen. For those looking to skip the driving, airlines continue to also be impacted by the war in the Middle East. The government of Canada issued a broad travel warning this week that fuel shortages may result in flight cancellations for anyone traveling abroad. If you choose to travel, you must be prepared in case you become stranded abroad, reads the notice. No financial assistance will be provided by the government of Canada. The government is basically just saying, be careful out there, because things are unpredictable, said Travel Secure President Martin Firestone. He noted that while it's still worth it to get travel insurance, many companies have announced they will not cover travel interruption or cancellation if linked to the jet fuel shortage. Despite all of this, he said, Canadians are still planning on going ahead with their summer vacations. I don't think people are going to change their plans because of the price of gas, said Firestone. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money, but if you have a destination to go to and you've already planned it, you're still going to go. It's just going to cost you more. The big fear is getting stuck somewhere because a flight has been canceled due to the jet fuel shortage, he said. The worry is not that passengers would be stranded indefinitely, but that their flights would be canceled and they'd be delayed a couple of days, potentially missing work and racking up hotel bills, along with all hundreds of others of people from the same flights. It could domino into a real ugly mess, he said. Firestone advises leaving as much time as possible to make connections to other flights, tours, and cruises. I think that's the new world we live in, he added. It's not possible to time things perfectly anymore. There's just too much going on out there to be like that. Let's move ahead to our next story from the world of business. AI investments are contributing to a surge in Toronto office leasing. Will it last? This comes from Manuela Vega, business reporter for The Star. Venture capital firms spent $7 billion U.S. funding AI in Toronto tech companies from 2020 to the first quarter of 2026, contributing to a surge in office leases over the past year, according to a new report. The findings are in the Tech Gateway Office Markets report released this week by CBRE, a Dallas-based Fortune 500 company and the world's largest commercial real estate services and investment firm. Leasing activity, both by tech and non-tech companies, has rapidly accelerated over the last year, CBRE's research managing director Mark Meehan said. Across Canada, the tech industry increased its share of leased office space from 15% in the first quarter of 2025 to 32% 1 year later, the report said. Toronto accounted for more than half of that 32%, CBRE told The Star, adding that the beginning of 2026 marked the quarter with the most tech leasing activity since the start of 2020. Still, the sector's leasing activity is below pre-pandemic levels when many U.S.-based companies were setting up offices in Canada, the report noted. While Meehan said leasing activity seems to be headed back towards that pre-pandemic peak, another expert said the office market in Toronto is changing slowly and it's still under stress from the transformation that has taken place over the past 6 to 7 years. That stress comes from the reduction in the need for office space that is across almost all sectors, said Peter Norman, principal of Norman Economic Strategies. Even though some 200,000 office jobs have been created in the GTA over the past 2 years, he said it's not creating a boom in office use. Jobs are being accommodated in high-density spaces as employers rely less on supplies like paper and filing cabinets because they can work electronically, and many have moved to hybrid work. Across the GTA, there's still about 4.5 million fewer square feet being occupied than there was in 2019, he said, adding that the remaining space is either vacant or has already been removed from the market. We're still way below water in terms of the amount of space which is leased up, Norman said. Additionally, he said the rate of growth is still really weak compared to before the pandemic. While the GTA was seeing office leases growing at a rate of about 2 million to 4.5 million square feet per year, that rate is now down to about 500,000 square feet per year at most, he said. Meehan, for his part, explained that the increase in office leasing in Toronto has been largely due to return-to-office mandates among banks, but tech growth has also played a role. For instance, Google, NVIDIA, Samsung, Adobe, LG, and Unilever have all established foreign AI research labs in the city, he said. However, he noted that even Toronto-based AI success stories aren't necessarily making large impacts on the office market. For example, Cohere has raised some $1.6 billion US in venture capital funding, but it occupies only about 7,300 square feet in the downtown core, he said. In the scale of our office market, it will help increase leasing activity, but it may not move the needle as much as wider trends like return to office or the decrease in the construction pipeline, said Meehan. Following some companies' short-term decisions to move to remote work over the past 5 years, the firms are revisiting their office strategies and quickly leasing space in the declining amount of Class A trophy office inventory, he said. The report also noted that while the tech industry is expected to continue creating jobs in Canada, the U.S., and Europe, particularly for workers specialized in AI, the shift to AI has simultaneously led to many job losses. The costs required to build AI infrastructure and develop models and tools have created a capital crunch and put an emphasis on reducing operating expenses, the report said. As a result, many tech companies are repositioning their workforces and capital expenditures toward AI development and deployment that has resulted in a growing number of job cuts. According to Oxford Economics, the report noted tech industry job growth has slowed considerably over the past several years, but it is expected to continue growing in 2026. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. In our next story from the front page, more GTA news with the headline, "A killer with long history of random violence gets a life sentence for senseless slashing murder of a homeless Toronto man." And this comes from Jacques Gallant, Courts and Justice reporter for the Star. A man with a history of violence toward strangers received a life sentence on Thursday for following a man he didn't know through the streets of downtown Toronto, slashing him, and then casually watching him die. Joseph Emery and Jamie Richardson were homeless and used the services of the same drop-in shelter for men at Jarvis Street and Shooter Street. They were both at Haven, Toronto on May 12, 2024, but there was no obvious interaction between them. Nevertheless, Emery followed the 50-year-old Richardson from the shelter to a nearby pharmacy where, in an unprovoked attack, he slashed Richardson's throat with a broken vodka bottle. Emery, 52, was convicted by a jury last year of second-degree murder, and on Thursday, he was sentenced to an automatic term of life imprisonment with no chance at parole for 14 years and no guarantee of parole at that time. This was a brutal and senseless taking of a life, Superior Court Justice Alfred O'Mara said. Emery has a lengthy criminal record going back decades. At the time of the killing, he was on probation after serving jail time for going to a park pool in June 2023 and declaring, "I'm going to stab all these children." He then turned his attention to two men who were watching him, brandished a 10-inch kitchen knife and threatened to stab them. He was also subject to 2 court orders in May 2024 to keep the peace for 2 separate incidents, punching a building cleaner in the stomach and pulling a knife on other shelter residents and threatening to kill them. Mr. Emery has a history of acting in an erratic, unprovoked, and threatening manner, O'Mara said. I'm satisfied that Mr. Emery presents a continuing threat to society. On the morning of the attack, Emery and Richardson were both at the shelter to use the shower and laundry facilities. There was no obvious interaction between them, O'Mara said. However, the security video showed Mr. Emery pay some attention to Mr. Richardson as he walked by outside the shelter, and later when he left the shelter on his way to the Urban Care Pharmacy. What happened next was recorded in videos from outside and inside the pharmacy. Richardson can be seen standing at the counter of the pharmacy where he was getting methadone to treat an opiate addiction. Emery then enters the pharmacy and stands off to the side behind Richardson, staring at him. But again, there is no interaction between the men. While Richardson briefly turned around when Emery entered, Richardson doesn't acknowledge him as he turns back to the counter. Mr. Emery jerked his body a couple of times and then, turning abruptly, he left the pharmacy and returned to the street, O'Mara said. Back outside, Emery paces back and forth and pulls out a vodka bottle from a bag, pointing it at others gathered around the building. Once Richardson exits the pharmacy, Emery can be seen going up to him with the bottle, in a cocked position as if ready to swing, O'Mara said. There's then a brief verbal exchange as Richardson tries to walk away, but Emery gets in front of him, maintaining an aggressive posture. An individual standing nearby approaches and places a hand on Emery's shoulder in a placating fashion, but to no avail. Emery then smashes the bottle against the wall and lunges at Richardson. The victim immediately backs up, but Emery pursues him and ultimately slashes his face and throat, causing massive blood loss. He then, according to the judge, turned away and walked casually up to the road where he had left his cart and other possessions, tossing the broken bottle into a nearby construction site. When he reached his possessions, he sat on a concrete road barrier and watched for some period of time the ensuing chaos as others tried to render assistance to Mr. Richardson, O'Mara said. Emery was arrested later that night in Nathan Phillips Square. The mother of Richardson's 3 children wrote in a victim impact statement that while Richardson was lost for many years due to his illness of addiction, his kids still had hope that one day he would overcome it. My children, Jamie's children, no longer get to have hope because Joseph Emery decided to take his life, Jacqueline Brown wrote in a statement filed with the court. I will never forget the day that I had to tell my children, Jamie's children, that someone took his life so viciously, and I will never be able to tell them why. She said they're left for the rest of their lives with the question, why Jamie? We still have no answers, no closure, no nothing, she wrote. Jamie's life mattered. He was a father, a brother, an uncle, a son, and a grandfather. He was a person and deserved so much more than what was given to him. And on to our next front page story in a Star exclusive. It has the headline, Why a Union Drive at Toronto City Hall Has Turned Nasty, and Why the Election Might End Up Deciding Its Fate. And this comes from Madis Habibinia, a City Hall bureau for the Star. A union drive by Toronto City Hall political staff took a bitter turn last month, with the union and the city blaming each other for delays at the Ontario Labour Relations Board, and experts warning the entire case could be upended if it drags past the municipal election this fall. The process to join a union got rolling in March of last year after roughly 170 political staff voted on membership cards. The Association of Management, Administration and Professional Crown Employees of Ontario, AMAP CEO, then applied to certify a bargaining unit on behalf of the employees who work for Toronto's elected officials. The city filed its objections, and the board sealed the ballot box until hearings could be held to determine key areas of dispute, including who the actual employer is, the city or the individual councilors. Since then, more than half of Toronto's councilors have sought intervenor status in the hearings, originally scheduled for January, which are set to begin Friday. The city is expected to present its cases first, with dates scheduled through May, June, and possibly September. Councilors are expected to eventually testify. Here's a look at how things have turned testy. A public display of frustration. The case took a dramatic turn in March when staff who wanted to join the union, frustrated by procedural gridlock, launched a public campaign. The campaign through AMAP CEO, which includes social media posts, urged Torontonians to pressure the city and councilors to drop their legal challenges. It accused both the city and councilors of wasting untold taxpayer dollars to fight the union effort and of delaying the process. It cited mental distress, harassment, and intimidation as among the reasons staff wanted to unionize. The campaign led to an emergency meeting on May 1st at the Labor Board to determine if the hearings could even start on Friday. There, Jack Siegel, a lawyer representing the 15 city councilors who are interveners, took AMAP CEO to task. I do want to express our extreme disappointment that the union would engage in a tactic that literally amounts to intimidation of witnesses, he said. Siegel also argued that the ongoing campaign was a public litigation of an active case and a potential breach of the Labor Relations Act. Though he said he may file a complaint with the Labor Board about the union's tactic, he didn't think there was any basis to toss the case entirely. Marissa Pollock, AMAP CEO's main lawyer, responded by saying the union would fight any complaint filed. You don't have the power, with all due respect, to make a determination and muzzle whoever it is that's talking based on mere assertions, Pollock told Siegel. Siegel also acknowledged that a complaint might mean lengthening or complicating the case even more. He did not respond to the Star's requests for comment. Here's our next news story, news from the GTA, again with the headline. A Toronto man is guilty in terrifying random murder of a total stranger. YMCA instructor Shane Stanford is hunted down and shot because he was there, the Crown argued. And this comes from Jacques Gallant, Courts and Justice reporter. Raheem McLaughlin was either on a sinister mission to murder anyone associated with the Toronto public housing complex, or he was an innocent party suddenly caught up in someone else's deadly actions. Those were the two competing narratives that a jury had to grapple with as it deliberated on the 32-year-old man's first-degree murder charge in the drive-by shooting of popular YMCA fitness instructor Shane Stanford in North York on October 7th, 2020. Late Thursday evening, following a day of deliberations, the jury landed somewhere in the middle. They convicted McLaughlin of second-degree murder, meaning they concluded he had the intent to kill, but that he didn't plan the shooting. The conviction carries an automatic sentence of life imprisonment with no chance at parole for a period between 10 to 25 years, to be set later following a sentencing hearing. It was undisputed that McLaughlin and a passenger who has never been identified drove in McLaughlin's car to various Toronto community housing complexes from Etobicoke to North York in the span of just over an hour that evening. At some of the complexes, McLaughlin can be seen on camera stepping out of his car to briefly walk around before driving away. Crown attorneys Matthew Block and Christy Wong contended that McLaughlin was carrying out a plan to kill anyone he believed was associated with one of the complexes. They said he finally settled on Stanford as the 33-year-old victim, a complete stranger, was seen pulling into a parking lot at a complex on Pengarth Court on his way home from work, only to soon drive off again. What ensued was a 3-minute high-speed car chase through residential streets. Several shots were then fired from McLaughlin's car, blowing out Stanford's back windshield as his car left the roadway and came to rest on the grass at the intersection of Regina Avenue and Khedive Avenue. Why Shane Stanford? The answer to this rhetorical question, I submit, is because he was there, Block told the jury in his closing address this week. Because Shane Stanford had the misfortune of being at a Toronto community housing complex when Mr. McLaughlin finally decided to put his plan to kill in motion. Moving on out to the world of business. Our next story has the headline, Carney and Smith are set to make energy announcement. Carbon price deal is expected. And this comes from the Canadian Press. Calgary. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith are to meet today in Calgary, where they've expected to announce an agreement on the future of industrial carbon emission pricing in the province. A source with knowledge of the discussions has said the leaders are expected to reveal a plan for Alberta to raise its emission price to $130 per ton by 2040. Last year, Alberta froze its industrial carbon emission price at $95 per ton. The two governments pledged in a memorandum of understanding in November to several steps, including a carbon price plan, in order to build a bitumen pipeline to the west coast. Carney has said today's agreement would advance that new pipeline. Smith has called the announcement another step toward resetting the province's relationship with Ottawa. A price of $130 per ton for Alberta would force Ottawa to be more lenient and with other provinces that follow the federal price. A judge ruled in 2021 that all jurisdictions need equal treatment for carbon pricing. The source said while the effective carbon price is expected to reach $130 per ton by 2040, the headline price in Alberta would reach $100 per ton by 2027 before rising to $130 per ton by 2035. The difference between the effective carbon price and the headline price is the way in which companies accumulate credits to comply with their emission limits. The effective carbon price, the market price, is the price at which credits are bought and sold on the open market. The headline price is what companies pay the Alberta government to reach compliance. The money goes into a general fund to invest in emissions reduction technology. Oil and gas industry leaders have said in recent weeks that Ottawa's carbon policy is putting Canada at a competitive disadvantage, especially compared to other oil exporting nations that don't have a carbon tax. Others, including Nancy Southern, Chief Executive Officer of ATCO, have said Canada's industry can't afford a higher price. I believe that all of us in industry will find ways to make ourselves just as competitive as we have been in the past with a new carbon price, Southern said this week. For our company, it's something we can prepare for, and it's not something we disagree with. Having strong carbon pricing, it allows a whole different set of opportunities in the future. Former Federal Environment Minister Catherine McKenna told the Canadian Press ahead of the Calgary announcement that the expected industrial carbon pricing schedule for Alberta doesn't make sense from an environmental or economic perspective. What is really unfortunate is it isn't that we're just weakening the industrial carbon price. It seems that our entire climate plan is being dismantled because of demands by Alberta's reckless Premier Danielle Smith, McKenna said. She also pointed the finger at rich oil and gas companies. It shouldn't be basically free for oil and gas companies to pollute. They're the only sector in our economy that have not reduced their emissions, said McKenna. Smith and Carney have said their deal is necessary to convince Alberta's separatist movement not to give up on Canada. Earlier this week, a judge threw out a petition that sought to put a separation question on a ballot, saying it should have never been issued and that Smith's government neglected its duty to consult First Nations. Smith has said the province will appeal the ruling. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's move on now to the world of sports. In the Maple Leafs, here's an opinion piece. The Maple Leafs dithering gives way to decisions. Like them or not, at least they're being made. And this comes from Damian Cox, a contributing columnist to the Star. Well, thank goodness the year of dithering dangerously is over. It was as if Brad Treliving and his management team realized in December that the roster they had cobbled together, for the 2025-26 Maple Leaf season wasn't capable of or interested in competing at the highest level, and then just let the cards fall where they might. Other than trying to pin the whole mess on Marc Savard or turning Troy Stretcher briefly into some kind of local hero, Treliving et al. Just seemed to let the rest of the season happen to them. It wasn't pretty. Well, these days you might not agree with the moves the Leafs are making, but at least they're making moves. Keith Pelley put his new management team of Matt Sundin and John Chayka in place in early May. Shane Doan was told his services of doing whatever he did were no longer required soon after, and then head coach Craig Berube was dismissed. Instead of letting the coach twist in the wind like the Edmonton Oilers did with Chris Knobloch while flirting with Bruce Cassidy, Chayka cut the cord quickly and cleanly on Berube. He made a decision and the organization moved on. Again, there are lots of critics of Chayka's anti-establishment hiring, and there will be those who believe Berube got a raw deal, but at least the Leafs are in charge of their own narrative again. With the number 1 pick in the draft in his hip pocket, Chayka already has more options than he ever did while trying to run the perpetually broke and distracted Coyotes in the Arizona desert. Now he can also hire any coach he chooses. Hopefully his choice for that job will be somebody who believes in a return to a philosophy embracing a high-speed, creative, and skilled brand of hockey. If it was to be former Marley and former Leaf Bruce Boudreau, that would be some kind of poetry, but don't hold your breath. These playoffs, good but not great so far, have featured a bunch of teams that play with passion and pace. Yes, the NHL still allows all kinds of hammerhead stupidity on ice, particularly when games are out of reach, but it would be impossible to make the case that big and slow hockey is ruling the day. Sure, size and aggressiveness helps, always has, but that size and aggressiveness has to be able to compete at the speed that dictates success in the NHL these days. Hopefully, given that Chayka has been dissed by pretty much every media outlet in town and anonymously slagged by all the members of the NHL Brotherhood that still resent the fact he got a general manager's job when he was only 26, he should feel absolutely no need to listen to the constant complaining by the same Toronto voices. You know, the voices that insist the Leafs are never tough enough and that the answers to all their problems are big, slow, stay-at-home defensemen and somebody who can fight. Seriously, hasn't it been proved to beyond a shadow of a doubt that an emphasis on tough hockey above all else never gets the Leafs anywhere? They tried it in the mid-'70s. They tried it with Brian Burke. And Treliving did all he could to slow down a once fast Leafs team by loading the roster with players unable to play fast. It started with Ryan Reeves and slid downhill from there. Enough of this. For good, please. Chayka is an analytics guy, and you'd be hard-pressed to produce any analytics or stats that prove thugs and muscle actually win hockey games. At best, they can augment but not alter a team loaded with high-end talent and quality goaltending. Right now, Colorado looks like the odds-on favorite to win it all, and they're doing it with fast, relentless, and smart hockey. Chayka, clearly ready to make bold decisions, has 2 big ones to make in the next 6 weeks or so. He has to decide what to do with that number 1 pick, and he has to decide whether to organize a route for Austin Matthews out of town. 2 things are true. First, Matthews doesn't have to go anywhere if he doesn't want to. Second, if the Leafs ever plan to move Matthews because they can't risk not being able to sign him, this is the prime moment to do so. A team that trades for Matthews would get at least 2 years out of him. He wouldn't just be a rental. That would maximize his value. He'll never be worth more than he is right now. Teams that missed the playoffs entirely or got knocked out early will be looking for ways to make that next step. Matthews is a name that would produce optimism in cities like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, to name just a few. If the Leafs want to go down this road, now is clearly the time. With dithering and indecision no longer dominating the team's strategy, all kinds of possibilities are in the offing. And now more news from the world of hockey. The Golden Knights have been winning since they were born. They're back in another conference final. This comes from Greg Beecham of the Associated Press. Anaheim, California. If a gambler at Las Vegas's high-stakes tables got on a winning run as long and as impressive as the Golden Knights' first 9 seasons in the NHL, the casino would probably encourage them to leave. The rest of the NHL can't get rid of the Knights that easily, and their ridiculous role has extended all the way into yet another Western Conference Finals. The Knights won their 14th playoff series when they finished off the upstart Anaheim Ducks with a 5-1 victory in Game 6 of the second round Thursday night. No team has won more postseason series since Vegas entered the league in 2017, and the Knights are in the third round of the playoffs for a jaw-dropping 5th time in 9 seasons. This charmed club is halfway to its second Stanley Cup title. But it isn't just luck driving Sin City's team deep into seemingly every postseason, while the rest of the West looks on in frustration and envy. Vegas embraces a win-at-all-costs philosophy. Vegas's win-at-all-costs philosophy has required years of expensive signings and high-profile talent acquisitions. It led to a shocking coaching change this spring. It has also depended on that talent's ability to coalesce when games mean the most, a feat that even great teams sometimes can't pull off. So far, the Knights' pot hasn't gone empty, and their luck is holding strong. "Just proud of the guys," said defenseman Shea Theodore, an original member of the Knights. "I think it comes right over from owner Bill Foley up top. That's the message going into every year, is to win cups, and I think we've put ourselves in great positions. Guys put the work in." With a pair of 6-game series victories over the Utah Mammoth and the Ducks, Vegas has improved to 15-4-1 since the franchise pulled the stunning move of firing Bruce Cassidy, its Stanley Cup winning coach, and hiring John Tortorella with just 8 games left in the regular season. The coaching change boosts the Knights' performance in the playoffs. Torts has been a good change coming in, just getting us the right mindset going into each game, each playoff series, Theodore said. "I feel like we have the right tools going in, and guys have been executing." The Knights had been in an 8-15-4 slump before they took the extraordinary step of turning over the team to a 67-year-old journeyman coach in late March. Tortorella hasn't made massive changes to the Knights' structure, but his new voice must have been heard. Vegas immediately surged past Anaheim and Edmonton to win the Pacific, before speeding down this division's comparatively smooth path to the conference finals. "I think we were maybe doubting a little bit of ourselves about what we were trying to do out there, and sometimes that happens," said Mitch Marner, who scored the opening goal in the clincher in Anaheim after getting a hat trick on the same ice in Game 3. "Torts came in and I think brought our swagger back to where it needed to be, and playing the way that we wanted to play. And obviously since that change, I've really liked our game as a team. I think we all have. We're playing a fast-paced game. We're doing all the little things right, and that's what it takes." Mitch Marner's in first season with the Knights. Marner's first season in Vegas has been a roller coaster ride, according to the longtime Toronto forward who left for Vegas last summer amid fan discontent with him while the Maple Leafs failed to reach a conference finals. While the Leafs imploded this season, Marner started relatively slowly out west by his lofty standards before getting on the roll of his career in the playoffs. Marner had a goal and an assist in the Game 6 clincher, giving him an NHL best 18 points in the postseason so far. The Toronto fans who thought he was a playoff underachiever must look for somebody else to blame because Marner has been aces in Vegas. Individually wise, it feels great to be going on to the next round with this team, said Marner. And the work now really just keeps getting harder, and we're excited for it. The Golden Knights prepare for a tough clash with the Avalanche. Indeed, the Knights flew out of Southern California knowing that their path to the Stanley Cup final is blocked by the Colorado Avalanche, who have been the NHL's best team for most of the season. Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar have led their group to 8 wins in 9 playoff games against the number 2 and number 3 teams in the conference standings. Vegas is facing long odds as it attempts to separate the Avs from their apparent destiny. But the players who wear the Golden Knights sweater have been on a collective lucky streak since they entered the NHL, and that success breeds a confidence that money can't buy. We're playing a very high-talented team coming up here, so we've got to make sure we're doing all those things right, Marner said. And then, when we get our opportunities, capitalize on them. Let's move on to some lifestyle news. And here's a story from the world of food and drink. It has the headline, "What Would Doug Do? How do I send back food at a restaurant without causing a scene?" And this is a special to the Star, written by Doug Wallace. I remember barreling my way through a bowl of lobster poutine that wasn't really agreeable. The gravy globular and the crustacean cold. I didn't bother telling the waiter, but in hindsight, I should have. Interestingly, the restaurant is no longer in business. Wherever you land on the scale of this dining situation, from radical acceptance to zero tolerance, there's a right and a wrong way to deal with any kind of problem. Who should complain? The person eating the plate in question should always do the talking. Anyone else makes it seem like an admonition. How to complain? Get the server's attention and explain the issue as quickly as possible. Do this quietly and directly at his elbow, even if it means beckoning him over to your side of the table. There's no need to involve your whole party. Have a preferred solution in mind, whether that's fixing the dish in some way or ordering something else. If it's the latter, be prepared to wait and don't choose something that will take forever to cook, like the chicken. And be polite. Shirtiness is unnecessary. Well, usually, anyway. Is someone at fault? Whether it's a server or a kitchen error, anything to do with accuracy or quality falls on the restaurant to make good, naturally. This is not what I ordered. This is overdone. Or, I asked if you could do this without anchovies, and you said yes, yet here we are. These are legit grievances. Or do you just not like it? Personal mismatches happen, but sending back a dish that is prepared correctly and as described on the menu puts the onus on you. Summon all the charm you can muster and say, "Sorry, this is not what I was expecting. Any chance I could try something else?" The restaurant will likely endeavor to accommodate you. They want all their guests to have a pleasant experience, but you need to be as apologetic as possible to rectify your problem. And you need to not have eaten half of the meal already. Bide the time with grace. If waiting for your replacement dish while everyone is eating bothers you, have another piece of bread. Resist the urge to pilfer someone's French fries. Above all, remember that calmness in the face of calamity always wins the day. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And here's another article from the Life section, Must Love Dogs. It has the headline, "From Paw Massages to Puppuccino Bars. Here's where Toronto dogs get pampered." And this comes from Victoria Christie as a special to the Star. With Toronto's exploding dog population, it only makes sense that entrepreneuring dog lovers would meet their moment with businesses devoted to providing our canine pals with the best products and experiences available. These local shops offer everything from stylish pet accessories to luxury grooming, handcrafted food and treats, and fun community events. Here, 5 store owners share how they turn their fondness for dogs into their livelihood, plus their top-selling product recommendations. And our first is Sniffany and Company. They're at 10 Case Goods Lane. Natalia Ornhammer opened Sniffany and Company in the Distillery District in 2019 after beating Hodgkin's lymphoma and deciding to build a business around her lifelong love of animals. The boutique blends pet retail with a paw spa, professional grooming services, and a puppuccino bar, where dogs can enjoy coconut cream topped with everything from beef liver to dog-friendly birthday sprinkles. Its grooming services are appointment only, meaning pets aren't exposed to other dogs or left waiting in cages, an approach designed with anxious or reactive dogs in mind. For Ornhammer, the goal was to build something more thoughtful than the typical pet store or salon. I wanted to create a safe space for dogs and cats that focuses on quality and reduced stress. And next is Our Haru. They're at 28 Bathurst Street. Jaewon Kim couldn't find the modern, well-designed pet products she loved from Korea anywhere in Canada, so she began curating and selling them herself. What started as a small operation run out of her apartment during the pandemic quickly grew into a destination for stylish pet owners looking for elevated Korean pet brands that blend fashion, function, and quality. The Stacked Market Boutique, named after Kim's dog, Haru, has since built a devoted following in Toronto, with some customers even traveling from overseas just to visit the store and meet Haru herself. Haru, my dog, is the reason behind everything, says Kim. Haru also means a day in Korean, which perfectly captures the store's ethos. Our days with a furry baby, we need to spend a day more preciously, she says, a philosophy that speaks to a broader shift in how many people now view their pets, less like animals and more like family. Our third spot is the Dog World Resort and Spa, and they are at 23 Camden Street. Stephanie Lomberg has spent more than 12 years working with dogs, starting in doggy daycare before going on to work as a receptionist, grooming assistant, and manager of a boarding facility. When she opened Dog World Resort and Spa in 2021, she wanted to create something more elevated than a traditional kennel or grooming salon. My dream was always to have a house dedicated to dogs, she said. Set inside a retrofitted semi-detached house in the Fashion District, the space includes a lower-level daycare, a fenced turf backyard, curated retail on the main floor, and a grooming spa upstairs. On a typical day, between 20 and 50 dogs come through the doors. Special spa services include mud baths, blueberry facials, and pawdicures, complete with paw butter massages. I really wanted to lean into the luxury side of it, she says. And our fourth spot is named Furr. I'll spell that for you, Furrr. They are located at 2207 Queen Street East. Jennifer Powell and Scott Jeong spent more than a decade each in the corporate world, Powell in consumer products, marketing, and Jeong in banking, before quitting their jobs to open Furr, a pet boutique in the Beaches. The couple launched the business in 2025 after getting their first dog, a French bulldog named Blue, during the pandemic, and noticed a gap in the market for fashion-forward pet products. I didn't understand why having a dog felt so joyful, but then shopping for him didn't always feel that way, says Powell. I want my dog to be an extension of me. I want him to be coordinated the way I'm coordinated, so that when we go out for walks, it's extra fun and special. Today, Furr operates as part boutique, part grooming studio, and part neighborhood gathering space, with events like pet portraits, adoption events, and art pop-ups, all part of the couple's goal to create a space that can bring the community together. And last but not least, a place with the name Molly Wags Pet Boutique. And this is at 3023 Dundas Street West. Michelle Reynolds calls Molly Wags Pet Boutique her Life Act 2. After a major life change in her late 40s, the former accountant found herself asking, as she puts it, "What do I want to do when I grow up?" The answer was close to home. "The best times in my life always were surrounded by either a dog or a cat," she says. Reynolds opened Molly Wags in 2019, naming the shop after Molly, her late Newfoundland heart dog. It has since become a pillar in the Junction neighborhood. Reynolds says the store is 90% Canadian, with many treats sourced from Toronto makers, and customers often come to her specifically for food advice. "We are really serious about nutrition," she says. Let's move on now to the world of music, and our story has the headline, "Drake dropped 3 albums at midnight. Here's what people are saying." And this comes from Christian Lautens, staff reporter, and Sharanki Kulanthirasa, a staff reporter. Fans waited 3 years for Drake to drop his 9th solo studio album and about half a second for his 10th and 11th. The average bedtime in Toronto was bumped when Drake revealed Thursday night, with a fireworks show over the waterfront and projections on the CN Tower, that 3 albums would drop simultaneously at midnight. Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor gave fans plenty of late-night homework to pore over the 43 songs to search for sneak disses and coded references. It was the first solo album releases for the Canadian since his 2024 feud with Kendrick Lamar. Some declared Drake is back, and even more broadly, that he saved hip-hop. Others trashed what they perceived to be a quantity over quality approach. "Congrats, but if my son fails his math test today, I'm sending him to you," Hasna Chadi wrote on Drake's Instagram post. Many joked about taking the day off on Friday as the live listening reactions carried on into the early morning. "Bro saved hip-hop again," they call Master Bruce said in the comments. Aiden Ross, an online streamer, hosted a listening party on Kick for more than 6 hours where he expressed support for all things Drake. "Drake Day is a great day," he said during his stream before the rapper himself made a quick FaceTime cameo on Ross's stream just to tell the content creator, "I love you," before hanging up. The release also drew attention from K-pop supergroup BTS. In a clip circulating online, members J-Hope and V sharply turned their heads mid-dance after hearing a lyric on Make Them Cry. "I'm feeling like BTS 'cause it took the whole career for me to be so discovered." Gotham Hip Hop, an independent creator on X, said the stunt allowed fans to enjoy the different sides of Drake as fans typically debate over his R&B crooner tracks and trap rap. "Instead of sifting through one big album, you can just enjoy the version of Drake you like the most," the creator wrote. The consensus online was that Too Hard for the Radio, off Iceman, was the standout track as fans praised the West Coast production, which some took as a dig towards Kendrick, who used a similar style for Not Like Us. Drake even referenced Lamar's producer DJ Mustard. "Mustard heard about us. Gotta catch up to the slaps. You ain't had one since me and YG rapped." He really made a West Coast banger from Canada, New York DJ King Jared wrote on X. And finally, here's an opinion piece from the world of entertainment. Another sign of the apocalypse? Animals are getting drunk. This comes from Vinay Menon, entertainment columnist. "In gloomy times, we drink. And by we, I mean deer in rural France. With the help of Google Translate, here is part of a PSA the French authorities recently posted on Facebook. If Bambi is having a bit too much of a forest aperitif, it might not be the time to drive like you own the road. In addition to the roundabouts and baffling traffic signs, now drivers need to be on guard for sloshed cervids acting like they are in the club district. The post includes a video of a deer behaving erratically in a field. It spins in tight circles. It falls on its back. It gets up on splayed legs. It looks around in a daze. Then it bolts. So, basically Andy Dick outside a Hard Rock Cafe on a Tuesday night. The animal experts will tell you many species consume fermented fruit and decaying vegetation. This can induce intoxication, as when your uncle starts pounding steam whistle after losing on FanDuel. But those animal experts don't need to fill column space, so I'll tell you what's really going on. The animals know the world is in a bad way. It's not just the jaunty deer of Saône-et-Loire who are drinking their problems away. The red-winged parrots in Australia are getting blotto. Vervet monkeys in St. Kitts routinely pillage Ting in the Sting cocktails from frightened tourists. This never happened before climate change or high inflation. Cedar waxwings are treating soured berries like they are free wine samples at Costco and then flying into windows. Some tree shrews have a blood alcohol level that would get their driver's license suspended. A drunk moose in Sweden needed to be rescued after getting entangled in an orchard. Jaguars chew on hallucinogenic yage and then act like they are at a rave. The animals, like us, are trying to numb their pain. They yearn for escape. It's another sign of the apocalypse. The animals are inebriated. Remember that viral story last year of a raccoon that fell through ceiling tiles at a Virginia liquor store? How would a raccoon know to smash bottles of gin and then lap up the booze while avoiding the broken glass? All I know is that raccoon was photographed after it passed out and sprawled face down next to a toilet. That is how my wife found me the morning after Donald Trump won the election. The Guardian once cited another example of animals getting plastered. This included a brown bear cub who required human intervention after getting wasted on mad money. There was also a feral pig in Australia that pilfered 3 six-packs from a site. One camper said the pig drank all 18 beers, then got involved in an altercation with a cow. I bet you that pig was pissed about the cost of living. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 15th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Phil Tomczak. Thank you for listening.